Okay, so I can see your chat comments and I can hear the music, and that's the end of the song. This last little piece is those are the sound of some frogs I recorded when I was up in Vermont, and I did it with a little crappy field recorder mic and put it in. So what are we doing? Okay, escape the 8-bar loop. I'm going to show you how I turn a song into a song. I mean, how do I turn a little starting loop idea like this and turn this into an actual piece of music that we can listen to over time. You know, a loop is cool, it's fun, it sounds good, you can groove out, but there, that's the loop. That's what you get. That's 8 measures. But if you don't do anything with it, this is going to get boring after a while. Like anybody older than 3 years old is going to figure out this is a loop and it gets boring. So what we're going to do in the workshop, I'm going to show you how I make these song sections, where you have an intro section, a drop, drop 2, drop 3 is kind of like the climax section where there's a lot going on. And then I have a little breakdown that we're going to build out together, and the ending wow section. And I like the endings a lot. Some of the time, the ending of a song is the most interesting part because you're kind of free to do things that you weren't able to do maybe before. So let's introduce the track first. Before I get really into crazy composition techniques, I want to just mention bus groups. These 3 channels over on the side, you can see they have orange track mute buttons, and they're set up with no input for the audio section. These go to the master. Everything else in the session is going to one of the bus groups. You can see I have mono low, I have beats, and I have instruments. So let me run through these real quick, and just once you see how they sound, you'll understand why I'm doing this. I better mute my effects. I put the Z key on there. You get all my secrets. So mono low right now, all we have is kick drum and sub bass. The reason I did this, first of all, was because kick and sub are the hardest thing to get working together in a mix. So for mix down, if you isolate your kick drum and your low sub bass line to one place that's in mono, it's a lot easier to get those working together at the right level. You can see on a spectrum analyzer right here, you can see those bass line notes, and the kick drum is popping up right there. And you want those to be kind of like in their own, in the same space on the low end. Without going crazy too much into mixing, we have obviously all the drums in one place. And check this out. This bus is blue. These drums are blue. I did that so I can easily look in my session and see what channel is percussion and what channel is going to the drums bus. When you get a bigger session with like 30, 40 tracks, if your tracks are not labeled, it's really hard to mix. It's really hard when you hear a sound and you want to grab the fader and mix it, but you don't know where that sound is. You know it's on a channel, but which channel is it? So I label the channels, it only takes a second, and then I color code them. So now I know everything in this blue group is going right here to this beats bus. Then I can do compressor, EQ, whatever, and have those all working. And then it's a lot easier to make a stereo mix. Get your drums working together, they're gonna sound better as a group. What's on the green channels? Well, that's the synths, that's the melody, the risers, all kinds of harmonic, melodic stuff. These sounds require a different kind of compression from percussion and different kind of mix. You know, you can do wider phase, more stereo, more fun mix effects. So I put these on their own group, and basically I'm mixing like 3 different little things here. The instruments I mix in a stereo field to get them sounding good together, the beats, stereo field sounding good together, and the mono low, I get those working together by themselves. I'm telling you, that makes it so much easier to mix. I never have to use multiband compression at the end because I know the mix is basically organized from the beginning. Really helps a lot. So I recommend you do that with your channels. All you do is go to one of your channels, open up the in-out thing. I use key commands, but you can do it from here. And you take the audio 2 and send it to one of your groups. You have to have your groups on no input so they receive anything, and then you get the input switch like this, and then it comes through. Boom. So there you go. That is my mix down lesson. Here's our original 8-bar loop. Now the basic concept of what I do is I want to take short loops and develop them into longer phrases. So before I can actually get into song sections and making like the building blocks of, you know, drops and peaks and transitions and everything, first I have to develop each sound and make a couple of variations of it. So little bit of sound design here. I want to talk about the kick drum first. This is a drum rack with 3 sounds in it, and they make 3 different, well, sounds. This is like that. Just a little click on top to make it come through as a high frequency sort of thing. There's the body of the kick drum, and then the sub of the kick drum. The word is layering. And with these MIDI clips, you can see this one is titled sub only. So if I want that by itself, I can have it. This one is all 3. But the one I use a lot is like this one. It said no sub. So like for an intro section, I can play this higher kind of kick drum and wait for something dramatic to happen and then drop this one with the lower one. I'm not sure if you can hear this. If you're on a laptop or phone, you might not get that low sub, but if you have headphones on or good monitors, you can really hear the difference. And the reason it's so much fun to do this is because with the layering, all you do is select a range of notes, hit the 0 key, and that turns them on and off. I'm going to play this clip right here. We hear all those notes. Now when I want this clip not to have the low sub, I select them all, hit the 0 key, and that sub is switched off. And what happened right there? At bar 8, there was nothing. We had a little gap, which makes this loop into like a phrase. You can see the length is 16 bars, but in the middle, there's a little bit of a gap, so it takes it away, and then when the loop comes around, it kicks it back in. So 2 basic composition things with kick drum. One is use layering so that at an important part of the song, you have all the layers in. At something like an intro or an ending, mute the sub layer so there's less bass pressure in the song, feels like it's less important, gives you some contrast where you can go back to the full kick drum and it'll feel like boom, like super loud. And then the other thing is go to bar 8, mute the notes from bar 8 to bar 9. That's one measure, 1, 2, 3, 4. Mute those notes out and you get a little thing like a turnaround. It's like at the end of the loop, at the end of the 8 bars, the kick drum drops out, and it's kind of like having somebody automatically mute the kick drum on bar 8 so you can unmute it and it comes back in, more dramatic. We have a lot of tracks to go through, so I don't want to spend too long on kick drum. Let's see what's happening with the bass line. Here is our basic bass line. If you have any questions, you're welcome to type them in. I can see the chat over there, and I don't think I missed anything. I'll try to answer all your questions as we go live, so as we keep going. So feel free to type them in. So there's our basic bass line. I made some other ones. A little bit more of a melodic motion. Drop 1 plus. A little bit of a longer loop, and right here. Check that at bar 4. That's a rhythmic variation that makes more energy compared to before. Right here. Da da da. Above it, we had a basic one with a kind of like melodic variation. And this one is really fun. That triple bump, ba-da-dot, makes it like faster rhythm, more energy. So a little composition trick. And what does this say? Oh, these are labeled. Drop 2, drop 1, peak. What is going to happen at the peak? I love this bass line so much. Get my quantize on. And then we have a red one for another peak. So who can tell me what's the difference between the red one and the orange one? Listen to these two and tell me what's the difference between the red bass line and the orange bass line right now. This is the red one. Type it in, type it in. What's the difference between this orange one and this red one? The difference is the red one has one higher note right there that makes it just different enough that you can use that in a different song section and have an obvious feeling difference. So changing up your bassline rhythm and changing up your bassline notes is a good way to get variation. And then guess what? Instead of listening to this original loop all day long, suddenly I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops. If I just did each one of these loops for 16 bars, that's getting close to a song. I mean, all you have to do is change up the drums, play those different bass lines, and suddenly a couple of small variations of just rhythm and melodic notes gives you actually your song sections. So let's keep going on here. This track is called Beep plus Chuck. I like naming things by how they kind of sound. That is a drum rack right here. I'm going to play through these clips and show you what we got. This is called original. That means when I first made the clip, that's what it had in it. And then I labeled some variations. So you can hear this is not the main beat for the song, but it's like a cool beat that has lots of little spices and stuff in there to make it more interesting. And all I did to create the variations here was I started with this full loop that has all these patterns, and watch as I go down these clips. These two bottom layers are muted. Next clip down. It has fewer sounds. All I did was select a range of notes and hit 0 again. So drum racks and MIDI instruments are really great for editing because you can just mute notes and it's the easiest way to get variations. That's clip 4. I like version 6. It's only a beep and the tick tick, and then beep by itself. I want this to be pink. And then tick tick by itself. So the way this works is when I'm building a song section, I can take these clips and go in reverse order up through the stack to make music like this. Now we have 2 sounds in. Now we have 3 sounds in. The kick drum just dropped out all by itself because we had that built into that loop. So type a yes if you're with me on this. What I'm doing is showing you how I develop length by making variations and combining them. Just want to see a couple little yeses popping in. I hope I didn't miss any comments. My comment window is kind of small, but I think I can see what you're doing. When it's time for another little one, I launch the next clip. And the clips are numbered, so I can just see that. Jill says yes. Thank you, Jill. So when I get up to the top of this clip stack, this is what I call a clip stack. When I get up here, I have all the loops in together. And right now, even with a kick drum by itself and these different loops, I can make something that sounds like minimal techno or just music with a cool vibe. Why is it cool? Variation and repetition. The repetition keeps you in the groove, but the variation gives you something a little bit different every time the loop happens, so it stays interesting. Hey, Daniel, how you doing, man? I love your questions. Daniel sent me this question where he took a Ableton session and recorded his voice asking questions and then sent it to me. And I was like, wow, it's so cool. I could hear you talking. I could hear what your voice was saying. And I understood what your question was. We have a question from Jill. Where do you click before 0 to mute? Good question. Okay, so here is a clip with... Let me make sure we can hear this. This orange one. I click right here on the black and white notes. That selects the whole range. If I wanted to mute only one note, you can click right on the note and hit 0. And that note's muted. But if you want to mute a whole row, you just click on the white or the black note representing the MIDI keyboard to select that whole range of notes all through the whole clip. Comments should be besides the video frame, which would make it easier to comment while you're explaining. Yeah, man, I know. If you want to help me with web design and get that built on the page, I would love it. But good news is I just saw that on YouTube. Now YouTube can save the chat from a live video. So when you get the replay, everybody who's watching the replay, I think you'll have the chat also in there. So that might be cool. Yeah, Jill, good question. That's important because using the 0 key to edit your MIDI notes opens up a lot of possibilities. Now we have another percussion group. Let's see what's in this one. I'm going to play these with a kick drum, now that we know the kick drum's over here. This is finger snaps I recorded just with a mic. I wanted snaps, I wanted it to sound good, put it in the mic. This is a good place to mention envelope editing. If I want to make variations, here's the original loop, which I didn't really love so much. So I edit it down. and eventually cut out that extra hit right there. I'm going to use the B key, turn the pencil tool on and off. Listen to this when that little hit is in, okay? It's not like the worst sound in the world, but I don't want to hear it every single time. And listen to how the loop feels when that little hit is missing. It's got like a little mini gap, and for me it's easier to sit in that groove with that piece missing. And if you love house music, you know how good it is when just a new hi-hat comes in that can make your whole day. How about another new hi-hat? What am I doing? Layering sounds in a drum rack. If you listen to like Swedish House Mafia or something like that, sometimes the only difference in a whole huge drop is like a new hi-hat comes in, but it makes your whole body like totally excited because you can feel that hi-hat. So I am layering up drum sounds in this drum group here. This is a cool little sound. I don't know if you ever produced using Recycle. That's a program that takes a long drum loop and chops it up into little slices and then sequences them automatically. So this is what it looks like after you take a drum loop, sequence it into, do like slice to MIDI note, something like that. For texture, check out what this is doing. I opened the envelopes window, that's with the little E down here. And I went to the mixer envelope and the track volume. And this sound was kind of cool, but I didn't want it to be loud the whole time. So I just made a little volume variation so it goes up and down by itself. Let's go with now listen to how this one kind of comes in and out of the mix as it's playing. So the idea here is use a volume envelope inside your clip to make some variation. Why do you want variation? Because then you can listen to the clip longer without getting bored. That's the whole point, and I don't want you all to get bored, so I want to keep going. You know, there's some crash cymbals, some drum fills, bass lines that basically are doing a higher version of the sub bass. And that's layering, basically. Here's the sub over here. And I made a second upper bass line just to make like mid-range texture so it works well on sound systems. There's another little bass sound. Again, layering. This one's a little more distorted to give it some fuzz. This is how you get a nice thick texture in your track. And then the rattle channel, one of my favorites. And check out what the EQ is doing on here. I know I'm spending a long time on sound design, but it's important because if you do good sound design, every little tweak you do is worth a whole song section. This sound is so interesting, I could introduce this sound and have like a whole 8 bars or 16 bars of only this sound with a kick drum, and it's so good that'll be happy, you know, happy listening. What I did here was I just automated the EQ8. Open the envelopes view. Those are pretty small automation changes, but it makes a nice little difference in what we hear in the sound. So a little goes a long way. And the main character, this was also an acoustic recording I did. I did a long jam playing along with a beat loop, and then I looped a little chunk of it. So we've got some harmonic layers, some piano layers, and then some risers and stuff like that. So I got to keep moving. I know we don't have forever. So what are building blocks all about? Well, I'm going to show you how I basically create a building block, and this is going to be one key command that's going to change your life. So let me start with just a bass line loop right here. I'm going to play from the master channel, and you can see this thing right here. It says new sound, new scene. If you have a question, if I'm going too fast, let me know, but I think you're with me, so that's cool. New sound, new scene. I want to add a new sound to this and get it dropped in. So now I have 2 clips playing, which is cool, but I want them in the same place. So watch this. I'm going to do Shift Command I. I wrote down the command, the key command. It's Command Shift I. I think on a PC it's Control Shift I. That's the letter I, not the letter L, not the number 1. Command Shift I. And this is called Capture and Insert. That's the name of the command. It's in the edit menu. And what it does is it drops a new scene with a new number right below the current scene. And when you want to add a new sound, you can put in a new sound from anywhere in the music, and that command will drop it in. So let's put some snaps in here. Make sure you select the scene you're working on and do the key command. And it drops right in. Let's pretend a perfect 8 bars went by. I want a hi-hat to come in. Command Shift I, drop in a hi-hat. You can even do it before the end of 8 bars. Make sure you select the bottom scene, because what happens if you don't? If I play the claps and they're selected and I do Command Shift I up here, oops, I interrupted my whole flow and I put a new scene way up there where it's not going to help. What I want to have happen is I want the new scene to show up below this one so they're organized. Let's say on this scene we're going to have kick drum and claps come in. Make sure you select the bottom scene, Command Shift I, and then on the next one I want the sub kick to come in. Bottom scene, Command Shift I. So what I just did, as you can see, the bass line starts here and continues, and then every new scene, a new sound comes in. So now that I've built these out, it's like I have a record of my improv jam. When I was like improvising, triggering new clips, I put them into a record just by doing capture and insert. Now I can play through it again and listen to what we get. 2, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna go through it faster than 8 bars because, you know, what I'm leading to is this place with the kick drum. Here it comes. 3, 4, 2, 3. Count in your head. 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're gonna drop the sub kick on 8, 2, 3, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8. Here it comes. And then that low kick came in. So we just got basically 32 bars of music we can play because each one of these scenes I can trigger and let it go for 8 bars. And every 8 bars a new sound comes in. So it's always interesting. This is like the whole key to improvising with Session View and composing on the fly. It's so much fun. You can just do it like almost like a video game. I'm gonna play this one more time and add a couple more tracks. Let's minimize this. And this is why it's so handy to have your sounds in clip stacks, because you can just look at what like harmonic part is playing and add the right other parts. And I want some piano in there. So I select the bottom scene, Command Shift I. And what are we missing? How about some kind of a riser? Let's put in a reverse crash. You can hear that building up. And when it drops, I want to have this guy come in. Select the bottom scene, Command Shift I. I'm going to stop and ask everybody a question. Are you following the capture and insert section? Because this little thing is so important, and once you get it, you'll be able to go into Session View, jam out with your music, even if you only have a mouse. I mean, it's great with push or APC controllers or whatever, but even I'm doing this only with a mouse to show you that it's possible. So type in something, let me know if you get the concept on this, because this is how we build all the rest of the building blocks in the song, and we build them live by doing it, by listening to it, by feeling it, and being in the flow. So when you feel like, oh, you know, this loop is getting kind of stale, it needs a new sound, you can actually just launch that clip, play the sound, and then go back to where you were in the session and insert a new scene with that sound on it. Jill says, yes, thank you, Jill. I'm glad. I'm curious what your music is going to do, because your music's been getting a lot better over the last year. What did I not use yet? We've got the piano, the bass, that kind of stuff. We have a lead synth that sweeps up. Let's see what that sounds like. And I want to play this bleeps and sweeps risers thing. Carol says, yes, cool. So I'm going to add 2 more risers and put them underneath here. So we just created a peak. I know you felt how that felt. It was like stuff is growing, it's building up, something's got to happen. We're going to a new zone. That's what it's all about, making these layers happen. And all I did for this whole thing was I took my ingredients, where I had my kick drum, I had my bass line, I put in a bunch of different beats to develop that one bass line, and I added some harmonic parts. So like every 8 bars, you know, the bass line, the little thing came in, the lead came in. You can see that in the pattern right here. There's all the bass lines, there are the kick drums. The first section had no sub, and then after that we had the sub in there. All right. Percussion group, later on I added the reverse crash to make some energy going towards the next section. Another bass line, added some more harmonic stuff. And guess what? Because I have my bus groups organized, it's really easy to see. Oh, my percussion develops like this. It almost looks like a little pyramid. You know, you can see like the new layers coming in. And I have all my instruments organized right here, all in the same place. So if I want to think about like which instruments am I missing or what do I need for this song section, I highlighted a song section, then I can look at this group of tracks and see, okay, those are the sounds that are involved and that's what's going on. So this is why I love capture and insert. Command-Shift-I, tattoo it on your hand so you don't forget. And I might note for myself that risers make the mood. Risers are really interesting because they make transitions, which are bridges. So let me play through the song down here, and then I'll come back and explain what transitions are all about and why they work. So we're going to go through the intro, I'm going to play a couple scenes, and then get to the drop, and you'll hear what happens. Aha, start with the piano. What kind of song is it going to be? Nobody knows. All right, hand claps come in, a little bass line thing comes in. Oh, I went too fast and cut off my cymbal. I'll come back and do that again. Still sounded cool though. So we're in drop 1, we got a bass line, we got a beat, we got the beeps. Let me let that play through. And listen to what happens when I go to the transition scene. Wait, that cymbal's gonna mess me up. 2, 3, 4. That has to be, cymbal's an 8-bar loop, so it has to be firing at the right time. 2, 3, 2. Here comes a transition. So the transition is like a little bridge. And I see a question from, looks like Iris. Do you start with a kick or a bass? I start with a bass line because then it's more powerful when you drop the kick later. That's not written in stone. You can do it differently, but I like to start with the bass line and build up energy and then drop the kick drum. And after, how do you make your track sonically full in the mix and pleasing for the ears while being minimal? Damn, high quality ingredients and actually don't clutter up the mix. If you listen to some of your favorite records, try to count actually how many different instruments you hear. And you might be surprised, even busy people like, I don't know, like Aphex Twin or some kind of like modern dubstep shit, you can hear a lot of layers, but you can actually identify each layer. So if you keep your layers simple, that lets you turn each one up louder and it feels like more full track. It's kind of a paradox. Like if you put in 75 layers, they all get kind of squished in the mix and you might feel like you don't hear as much. So for me, making it sonically full is all about having, you know, the instruments be wide in their stereo range and full in their frequency range, but you still have space in the mix for the kick drum. So transitions are bridges. I want to play this one more time. I'm going to just play the transition by itself. Listen to what sounds are in this transition. What do you hear? Piano, finger snaps, and this rattle guy. And what do you not hear? I do not hear kick drum and bass line and beats. Simple answer. Transition is a thing that is continuous, like a little gap where you have no beat, no bass line, no low frequencies. It gives you a little moment to kind of take out the beat and make people wait, and then you come back in with the drop. So let me do this again, and I'll use the transition going from the intro to the drop. I'm going to let this go until the 7th bar and then hit the transition. 6. And I don't know why it works, but when you take the beat away and then bring it back, it always sort of announces a new song section in a cool way. Now the reverse crash is coming in. We're going to go to the next section of the drop. That little sound came in. Another little synth coming in. And we're going to hit another transition before drop 2. Let's see what happens. So just to review that, in the transition section, the beat drops out and maybe you hear a little surprise. I'll show this off. I grabbed this sample just because I like that kind of sound. And when you make a transition scene, you can do those kind of fun little things. And then drop 2, what do we have? We'll have it soloed. We have the next drop bass section, which goes with that upper bass section. In our piano part, we have a little solo line. So I'm developing each section where every time we go to a new piece of the song, I add some new interesting layers. Let's hear how we get from here to the break. All right, so what did I do right there? I had, for a total review, we started with the intro. We came to drop 1, where we came in with the kick drum and the bass line and beats. The transitions were like little miniature gaps. Drop 2, we had the piano come in and more of a full texture with all the sounds. And then we get to this breakdown. It says break 4M. That means 4 measures. That means I want to play this for 4 bars and have a little rest, almost like the introduction again, before drop 3. Let's hear what was in the intro. This is what the people first heard. 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. How long can you listen before this had to change? It's just piano. There's nothing going on, right? There's piano with beats. So that's like the beginning place of the song. If you want to have a breakdown, why not return to the beginning and give everybody a little rest? And what is this? Reverse 4M. This is a 4-bar reverse crash. I don't want this to be 8 bars long. I just want a 4-bar break to make a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a refreshment, and then we come in with drop 3. And this is that drop I said the bass line I totally love, this orange bass line over here. Let's go from the breakdown to that bass drop again. 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Ah, so good. When the bass comes back in, the sub bass line, the sub kick drum, it feels so good because you just came off a break where there was no low end. And those little signals, that little drum break that goes, that's a nice signal that reminds me when to trigger the next clip. So if you're playing live and there's a lot going on and there's people soloing or MCs going on or something like that, these little loop clips are a great way to give you a marking point that's like, wake up, it's time to do something. And the way I did that with a volume envelope. So this clip right here is basically doing nothing for 7 bars. And the 8th bar it comes in and it's like ding, 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 pay attention. And that reminds me, okay, play the next scene. Or it tells your soloist, hey, you're at the end of your solo. Or it tells your dancers like, oh, we're on the dance floor, something's gonna happen. And then you drop a new beat. So if I can go back to the top here, when you're making your ingredients in your clip stacks, it's a really good idea to make loops that have like a little different thing at the end. Because when you build them into the song later, all those little variations at the end of the loop, at the end of an 8-bar phrase, those variations give you signals that it's time to change. It tells the audience the music is developing, it tells the other musicians, and it tells you if you're performing live. All in all, that makes better listening and it makes it more fun. and it just kind of, it's like little bridges, to get through the pieces of your track. What time is it? It is 12:37. Cool. If you have any questions, type them on in. I'm going to keep going through here and play from the drop through this breakdown to the ending so you just hear what we have in the track. I'm going to jump in right here on this section. Fat bass line, piano's in, synth is in, reverse crash is coming in. We're going to go to a breakdown. And this breakdown I wanted to build live a little bit because this is that moment where you've got that lead happening, the bass line and the beats are in, and I want to add some percussion to get closer back to the main part of the song. So I'm going to start grabbing samples, doing capture and insert, and build them up. I love that little beep. It's like in those submarine movies. And this is really how fast you can build a song section if you know that you're just making layers, getting closer to when the kick drum comes back. You can just drop them in. Now I need a big fat riser before the kick drum. So when this riser goes off on the bleeps and sweeps channel, the kick drum is coming in next. And this is important. After you drop the beat, get that other riser out of there. Let it chill out. So what I did with this breakdown, I see that question, I'll answer you in a second. What I did with this breakdown was I started from an empty scene with not a lot going on. And it has that feeling of like, not like it's time to rest, but it's like this energetic thing of like the kick drum is gone, but you're still in the groove right after that big fat kind of climax part. And we're adding rhythmic parts, making them wait for the kick drum, going through each of these channels, adding up new sounds. Finally, before the kick drum happens, you use all the risers you have. I've got like the bleeps and sweeps riser, this lead synth, and a reverse crash. Finally, when the kick drum comes in, it's really important to strip back a bunch of layers and make a more simple drop. Because you need a little bit of a rest, like all those sounds are all in at the same time. I'm going to just turn off some of these. Maybe get to here. Can even turn off that one. And it makes a big difference to cut sounds out. If you want a big drop, make it simple and cut some sounds out. That's how you make the drop feel like huge. So Iris says, what do you think about music theory, and do you mix in key or just by ear? Well, I studied music theory at school for 4 years, and it's worth learning if you can put in the time to learn the scales on the piano. It's really valuable if you can sit down and play chords in any scale. And the reason is when I'm making music, I get a bass line from out of nowhere. Like I'm just fooling around. I like this bass line. The next step is to harmonize it or understand where it is sonically or harmonically, and knowing enough theory to be able to take a bass line from any key and put chords that match with that bass line is really valuable. These days, if you have push, you can kind of just like press the right square until it sounds cool by ear, but that's not really the same thing as understanding harmonic progressions, especially with, like you'll see in this ending section, when you have intertwining harmonic layers, it's really a lot more fun, and you don't have to waste as much time. So I'll let that play while I'm talking. And what about mixing in key? Yeah, I when I was DJing a lot, I did that as much as I could, and usually I could take a track and transpose it up one step or down 2 steps or something to make it fit together. And after doing sets for a long time, I kind of got experience of which tracks were close to each other in the right key, and then I could mix them really smoothly and start actually like remixing live or using one section from a song on top of a totally different song. So mixing in key is super cool. If you're producing and you have an idea of the key signatures, then you can actually make tracks to build a live set that will flow smoothly. Not like everything is in the same key, but so they harmonically interact in a nice way that's not dissonant. Or just by ear at the end of your question. Yeah, I do it by ear too. So what are we doing in this ending section? Well, just conceptually as a song, I'm going to a totally new zone, right? Like the main peak and the drop here. Bum, 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 bum. That's all we heard so far. Let's listen to just the harmonic stuff of what we had in the song. We had the intro. Bum, 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 bum. Do, 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 do. Almost like only just two notes. Boom, 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 boom. And this drop. We're all kind of on the same note. Dum, bum, bum. And then when I get to this ending section, now it's going through this cycle. It's more like a chord change. It's not repeating the same note again and again. It's a more developed harmonic section that has a low part and a middle part and an upper part. So I'm not sure if I can answer your question on music theory just today, because that's like a whole other world, but I wanted to point out that you can actually develop a lot of stuff even without knowing too much about audio. If you about music theory, if you just think in terms of layers and use like a few different textures where each one is doing its own thing. So there is the melody, an inner voice, and the reason I could put these together is because I already had them prepared in layers by frequency range. So the lead was like an upper one. This bass line was in a kind of like higher mid-range. This was lower mid-range. And the sub is over there, but that's on the sub channel. So, question from Daniel. Are there any guides on which sounds particular genres should have? Or do you throw anything in to hear how it sounds? Whoa, huge question. The guides of what sounds work for each genre is like, go on YouTube and listen to all the music in that genre and you'll get to hear from the feel of different genres. They go with different sounds. I don't know any kind of written guide for that. It's mostly by feel. Or look at the companies that put out sample packs and explore the sample packs to see how they do their groups, where industrial techno is going to have a hard, more clang kind of sound, and deep house is going to be softer with probably female vocals, and then dubstep is going to be more distortion with like that kind of an emotional feel. I really think about genres as emotional worlds with sounds that match that kind of feel. For the second part of your question, do I just throw in anything to hear how it sounds? Yeah, you can, and if the audience doesn't like it, it doesn't work. But there are kind of common standards of what people do. So let's get back into the composition thing. Thanks for all the questions. I dig it that you guys are here and spending your Saturday hanging out with me. I'm going to go from the drop, hit the transition, and into this ending section to show how it feels. And I built all these by doing capture and insert and adding new sounds on the fly. 1, 2, 3, 4, launch. You got to be able to count in your head for sure. That's really important. Now I'm going to use this transition down here as a little bridge. So that transition went to only the piano and the reverse crash, and then that let me drop the new ending section. If you noticed, a transition is a way to interrupt the groove and go to a different section. These are really cool. I made them green so it's easy for me to find them and hit them at different parts of the song. Let me show you how well these work. I'm going to go from this ending section, hit a transition back to the beginning, and you'll see how it sounds natural because the transition works that way. Okay, I'm going to go up to the transition before drop 2, right here. So the transition is like a little introduction for what's coming in the next scene. What if I want to go back to that same place where I just was? I wait for the right moment. And there you go. When you have transitions in between your song sections, you get to play forever. This is so much fun. If you're doing a live show and the audience is really into the music, like they're totally in the groove, totally dancing, and you don't want to stop the track, use your transitions to just get to a previous section and go through it again. The advantage is that you don't have to just loop one sound. It's not like if you're DJing with, CD players and you want people to keep listening and not end the song, you can cut a loop on the fly, but then you're just going to have that same loop going again and again. With Session View, if people are really grooving and you want to keep the song going, you can make transitions like this and go back to a previous song section and work your way through it to get all that cool progression that was happening. And then when it gets to the end, another transition, another song section. Pow. What I'm doing here is playing something you heard before, this little piano part, but now it's on top of a different bass line. Now I'm showing off a little bit. What I did was I took the piano melody, turned up aux C, which goes to the Hypnotizer effects unit, and here we have the Hypnotizer. And then I turned on the beat repeat so I could go like this. And turn that little piano melody into this bubbling layer. And now all of a sudden I have something to totally tweak out for like another whole section. So live effects are another whole world that gives you something to play with to make variation so your track is interesting to listen to longer. Let's turn that effect down. Thank you, Hypnotizer. So I want to jump back into camera view for a second, and I want to open a different session to show you that. How are we doing on the questions? I think I just saw one come in. So I'm going to open up that session, save that one. This takes just a tiny second of behind the scenes, and I don't want to end the thing. I want to stop screen share. Let's make sure Steve pops up. Daniel says, did you say your tracks are arranged by frequency range, and does that make EQing easier? Yes, my channels are arranged by frequency bands, and it's the opposite of making EQing easier. Like, I do EQing to arrange my sounds like that, and that makes composition and production easier. So mostly I use high-pass filters to split sounds into different bands. Like sub-bass was over here on channel 2, middle bass line was in the green section, and then the upper bass line. I was using high-pass filter and EQ to make those different instruments into their own frequency band in the mix. And that way it was a lot easier to compose and like have a track that makes sense, because I've got like, okay, here's the sub bass, here's a section with the mid-range bass, and I can kind of like put the whole song together that way more easily. I hope that answers your question. I got me back on the screen, so that's good. Anybody else have a question? I want to stop and point out that there is so much that I can talk about in all this, but I can't do it in 1 hour. So I want to tell you, I built some session lessons, which are hands-on built-in Ableton projects where you can do all these things in the workshop inside Ableton. It's like a live pack that you download and you get to open it up. It's got instructions inside. It's got exercises that you can do, and it's got hands-on like music where you actually build a track and do it with lessons and all that. So I wanted to ask you, do you want to see how these work? Because I can show you how they work in the workshop, and I can answer more questions. So let me know how you sound, how you think. Iris says, how did I learn effects automation and filters on Ableton so well? Definitely showing off. I did that by DJing and doing live electronic shows for years, where I built my own effects racks, and every show I kind of thought like what didn't work and what I wanted to have happen. And then eventually I got a very simple effects rack that made a wide range of sounds. So I kind of knew how to do it. Like when I want to put the piano up into that effects, I want the delay to echo. I want a beat repeat to sample the delay. And then I want to filter after the beat repeat. So that chain came from like 100 shows of hanging out with a singer and putting her voice in the mic into beat repeat. And sometimes we'd have a total disaster. There were times I was trying to use Looper and it would just be so uncomfortable. It would, like, the audience was like, not like, what's going on? Or the loop was weird. So I'm glad you noticed. Thank you for noticing that, Iris. It was really fun. And the Hypnotizer Effects Rack is available inside a session lesson where you can learn how to do that. So what I'm going to do is go back in screen share and show you what it actually looks like when you're inside these built-in lessons. And some of you all are already part of the lesson groups, so you know what they're like. But for anybody else who's watching either the replay or watching live, I'm going back into Ableton, and when the screen comes up, you're going to see a sidebar that's got instructions on it. Whoa, how does that work? If you ever did the built-in lessons, those are really cool because they're like a guided tour of Ableton and help you figure out how instruments and stuff work. So there we have the screen up. You can see there's a box on the side that says Escape the 8-bar loop, Module 4 Transitions. I wanted to show you an advanced module so you can see what's going on. On the right side, it says, in this lesson, we will connect our building blocks with transitions that lead from one song section to the next. That's kind of where I left off in the live track. But the really fun thing about these lessons, watch what happens when you start at the top and you press play. Welcome to Module 4, Transitions. In this lesson, we'll connect our building blocks with transitions that lead from one song section to the next. That is not me talking on the video, that is me talking inside the lesson. The plan for basic transitions is to make a blank scene between the building blocks. Okay, that was the green one. We did that blank scene. And page 2, example transitions. Page 2. I made an example scene for you to hear how this works before you make one. And you get examples. So basically, all the white clips in here are me talking. There's a pink reference to a video that you can click on that goes out to your browser and give you a little like tutorial just for help. Example scene, where you actually have instruments and sounds working right here to play with. Drop scene. So all these things are right here inside the session, and then I tell you what's going on. When you play the transition, you should hear a pause in the beat, some effects, and then the next section smoothly begin. And then you're going to do it. Activity, make a transition. Activity, I give you the parts to make the actual thing we're just talking about. So you learn by doing it, you learn it hands-on. The lesson goes through several pages. It says go to the next page. Page 3, how to use transitions. Look what's in the master channel. Page 3, how to use transitions. Voice guided. There's an activity. There's a video so you cannot get lost. Specific directions. And then over here, start here. Play this. Launch this. Do that. It's literally the best possible way that I can teach you how to do this stuff because you can spend time on it and you get all of the instructions by doing it right there in an Ableton session. I don't know if you ever tried watching a YouTube tutorial and like recreating what they're doing in Ableton. It's cool because you get to see new ideas, but it's hard because you have to open Live and open your browser and go back and forth, and you never know if you have exactly the same sounds or like you're trying to watch on your phone and the screen is really small and you have Ableton open. It's not the best way to actually do it. It's good for getting new ideas, but to actually do it, I made these built-in projects and it was just fun for me. I get to talk, record the activities and stuff, and then give you hands-on, actual sounds to work with a few pages of instructions that go through. So let me show in internet land, I'd like to show you what this looks like if you want to actually get your hands on these lessons. Let me go down in the chat, see if I missed any comments. Carol says, cool. Steven says, sure. I don't know if it's Stefan or Steven. Might be Stefan. So I have a little bit of a delay waiting for the screen to pop up. I want to show you the online platform where all these lessons are hosted. And I think I might have to, I have to change my screen share. Thank you, YouTube, for giving me options. All right, now I selected my browser window, so you're going to see the same thing that I see. As soon as that pops up, we're going to be looking at this really cool membership area for the Mixitecture students where you get all the session lessons in a group. You can download them and put them on your computer and open them up. There we go. So we're looking at that. You can see there's five modules. Step 1 is organize your session, and you get all these lessons. The overview of the course, the download window where you get the Ableton Live pack right there from a little link. It's got a YouTube video called How to Install the Live Pack. So I'm giving you tutorials to explain how to do this stuff, but the course is actually hands-on sessions. You're not actually doing it by video. You're doing it like actually directly hands-on. Some of this stuff you might recognize: buzz groups, make a backup, clear some space. Bonus master channel effects rack. That's a fun one. I put in this compressor, EQ, and limiter rack to just help you get your tracks done sooner. Because what I really want you to do is take these session lessons, build out songs where you get your song sections, your intro, your drops, your peaks, the climax, the breakdown, and the ending, all right there, almost like the first day you start making a song. And then there's a master channel effects rack to bring it all together so you can export something, play it for your friends, play it on the train, play it in the car, play it in the kitchen when you're cooking, and play it somewhere outside of your production studio so you can really hear it and feel how it works without getting stuck in studio land. Iris, can I use your Ableton voice guide vocal in an EDM drop? Yes. And send it to me or post it in the Facebook group. That's hilarious. I would love to hear what you do with that. That sounds like a really funny idea. So let me show you how to get these lessons. It's about 1 o'clock. I thank you for spending time with me. I hope I don't waste all of your day. There is, well, let's see. I'm logged in as a user. So what I'm going to do is log out and go through the whole process. When you first get to the members area, you can click View Teaser Content if you don't have an account yet. Accounts are free, by the way, so you can create your own user account and play with all these free resources. Then what you do is scroll over here to escape the 8-bar loop. There is a brand new Fat Juicy welcome video that tells you all about it. And all you do is click the red button, Join the Course. Pew! And that goes to this little checkout area that's got a few more details: what you're getting, what you're going to do in it, what's included, and then the Buy Now button. Usually this is $297, that's like $300, but for the people in the workshop, I do a special only right now. Save $100, you can get it for $197, and you have today, tomorrow, and part of Monday to think about it. If you don't want to spend that kind of money right now, there is also an option where you can do it on monthly payments, where it's $51 to get started, then 3 more. So it adds up to $200, but you do it monthly. And I believe those are all available on the live page. There are buttons at the bottom of the live page for the 2 options. I can include those in the emails, so don't worry about finding it. I'll make sure you know how to get those when you want them. You scroll down and see if I missed any questions. Not yet. And there's a couple things that I'm including here, like the master channel effects rack. Usually that's like another whole session lesson, but you're getting it included. Basic mastering lesson using EQ, compression, and limiters. And, this kind of stuff is inside of Escape the 8-bar loop. This is really a fun class. It's the best possible way to learn when you're doing it hands-on and playing with the sounds, playing with the music, and actually touching it inside the program. I don't know anybody else who's teaching exactly this way. Most people who sell online courses are just like, oh, here, buy my video pack and you'll learn how to do it, which has been working. I guess it works for some people, but for me, I think it's so much better to do it inside. Module 1, organize your session. Module 2 is about clip stacks, where you make the phrases, you make those longer loops. All that MIDI and audio stuff that we went through is in there. Module 3 is building blocks. That's where we did capture and insert, our favorite key command to drop a new scene in. Module 4 is about transitions, where we have sweeps, crash cymbals, glitches and gaps, all those things that make a little bit of a break between song sections to build up energy before the next drop. Then Module 5 is cool. That's effects and controllers. That's where I talk about how to perform the whole thing from session view and record to the arrangement, which we didn't do in this workshop, but the basic idea is that after you have your session view all laid out the way you like, you press record in the master channel and you just you kind of play the song like a performance, but it comes out in the master channel. I'm going to take one quick second and open up that workshop channel just in case anybody has questions, I want to have the Ableton session ready to answer the questions again. So if you have a question, it's about 1 o'clock. Type in your question now, and I'll answer it in the last few minutes before we get off. I don't want to run much longer than an hour. I know everybody has stuff to do. You want to go out and drink beer with your friends, or if it's people in the U.S., maybe you want to, I don't know. What do people do on Saturday afternoon? Do your laundry? Module 6 is bonus content. There are drum racks included, the bleeps and sweeps risers, the crash cymbals, and the hypnotizer effect rack are all actually included in this course. So if you like the effects I was playing with at the end, you can get them when you join Escape the 8-Bar Loop, and they're in the different bonus modules. So that's what it's all about. If you have any questions, I got the Ableton session open. I could show you anything that's from today real quick. And while we're waiting, why don't we have some background music?